Atlanta, Dallas, Chicago, Connecticut, and is now being held in San Diego, California. We're thrilled to host the 10th symposium in the well-known Golden State.
The Spiritist Symposium has also become a symbol of the unification of the United States Spiritist movement. This year, 30 Spiritist organizations across the U.S. have sponsored this event, and many more are represented here today. We would like to thank the organization members of the United States Spiritist Council for promoting this event. We would also like to thank all volunteers from San Diego and from many different states around the world. A special welcome to all those that came from different states and from different countries. And finally, we thank all those who are watching the symposium on our live webcast.
So there are 9 Spiritist centers in California. There are 3 in San Diego. And if you would like more information about these centers, or more specifically about the groups in this area, there are flyers in the tote bag that you got at the registration desk, or you can ask one of the local volunteers. Through different events such as this symposium and through special guests, speakers, these centers have been spreading Spiritism, teaching in several cities, and today they're all here to welcome you to this meeting.
So now some housekeeping rules. Please make sure your cell phones are turned off. If you need any help, find your way out to Liberty Station. There are several volunteers outside to help you. Please remember, books are only for sale during breaks. Now, please sit, relax, and enjoy this day of learning.
Before introducing our first speaker of the session, we'd like to let you know and remind you, since we already have let you know, that at the end of the day there will be question and answers with all the speakers, including the ones from the workshop this morning. So if you have questions, just write them down on a piece of paper and hand them to one of the volunteers or at the registration desk. And at the end of the day, we'll have all of your questions and we'll try to get them answered as much as we can. Who will present the theme, The Real Meaning of Love. Suzana Simões was born in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. She's a 3rd generation of a Spiritist family. She is a doctor of physical therapy and works as an assistant professor at Nova Southeastern University. Suzana is one of the founders of the Conscious Living Spiritist group in North Miami, Florida, and the current president of the Spiritist Federation of Florida. She is an active speaker in the Spiritist movement in the United States. Suzana, are you here? There you are.
Good morning. I have been given the easy task to speak about the real meaning of love. There was an ancient Persian legend that a man living in a very prosperous land with his camels and animals, a very beautiful fruit orchard, and he had a very calm and fulfilling life. He didn't have many conflicts. He didn't have many turmoil in his life. The property was beautiful. On the back of the property, there was a river. One day, a religious man was passing by the region and stopped by this man's house. And the man invited the traveler in and welcomed him to spend the night. The traveler was a very religious man who traveled around trying to bring people to become faithful and have some sort of religion. So the 2 men were having dinner, and the traveler asked the owner of the house, "Are you happy?" The owner said, "Yes, I am. I am happy. I have a beautiful land. I love my family. I am loved by my family. We are all healthy. We all trust God. and I am a successful businessman. I'm not too ambitious, but I feel like I have everything that's necessary to provide to my family. The traveler then asked the man, "Do you have any diamonds or precious stones as the basis of your happiness?" The man said that he did not have any diamonds or precious stones, and still he felt that he was very happy. Well, the night went on, and the man kept talking about different things and eventually went to sleep. The owner of the house from that point on could not think about anything else but the diamonds. So one day, he decided to leave his house and his family and to seek for the diamonds. So he entrusted his family to his brother-in-law. He also left with his brother-in-law most of his money, and he went out after the diamonds. The years went by. His family suffered from separation. They lost touch with him. Eventually, they suffered abandonment and separation. The man himself, he got old, he got sick, and eventually he died. 10 years later, the religious traveler was again in the same region, and he decided that he wanted to stop by at that same house. When he gets to the house, he realizes that the man is no longer there. No one really knows of him, but the new owner invited him in and welcomed him to spend the night. So now we have the two again speaking in the evening, and as they're sitting and having this conversation, the traveler noticed over the fireplace some beautiful stones. So he walks to the stones, he picks them up, and he says, "Oh my God, these are diamonds. Where did you find them?" And the man said, "Well, I found them at the river on the back of the property. In fact, the animals, when they go to drink water, they walk over these stones, and I just thought that they were beautiful and different, so I decided to bring them to the house to adorn the fireplace. Well, you must take me to the river tomorrow morning." So they go to sleep, and the next day in the morning, they go to the river. And when they get to the river, the traveler realizes that under the clear waters of the river, there was a bed of diamonds, of many colors, of many shapes. And so the diamonds were mixed and was hidden under some more common rocks and could not be easily observed. So Joana de Angelis, in the book Mining of Love, where you find this story in the introduction of it, says that the first man of the story, the first owner of the house, was happy without knowing about the diamonds. And he left the diamonds there in the back of his property and went to look for them away from his home without ever finding them. The same, she says, happens to love. We possess it in our innermost, and we do not know it, nor do we recognize it. In fact, we need often someone who comes into our lives to awaken this awareness. Many of us spend a big part of our lives and our resources seeking for love where it cannot be found, and believing that love comes with certain circumstances and certain situations. So when we look at this passage of Joana de Angelis, there are two things that she pinpoints to us, as I have said. We are love in essence, and we do not really know what love means. There will be a day where this will no longer be the theme of any Spiritist conference, right? We're still trying to figure out the real meaning of love. And so I feel the responsibility of talking about something that I have no clue. I'm sorry to say that, because the only thing that I have known in my life is conditional love. Oh yes, I can talk about that. No? I love the people who love me. I love the people who think just like the way I think. And when they agree with me, I feel so good about myself, right? I feel like I am right, and it's so good to feel right. But when they don't think about the same way that I think, then I'm challenged in my ability to love. So I can only speak to you about conditional love because my love has conditions. My love expects retribution, and my love resents, and my love is full of frustrations and has ups and downs, so it's a very type of human love. But we have been given a reference of what real love means. And in the words of the Spirit, Amélia Rodrigues, she says that over 2,000 years ago, he came like a comet through the dark night of human struggles to direct humanity to love. And he became the highest point of love on earth, the most solid manifestation of love ever known, a master whose words and acts constituted one sole act. And what is it that he came to teach us? He came to teach us that love is absolutely the only solution for human struggles and for human conflicts. He came to tell us that in face of hostility, in face of aggression, in face of difficult situations of life, we must choose love. Because love enriches our soul and love frees us. He also came to teach us and to speak to us about a different paradigm and understanding of what it is to be a winner in this life from the Spiritist perspective. So he came to teach us that the winner in this life is the one who seeks to surpass and to overcome his or her moral inferiorities, and in doing so becomes small so that others can be seen, can grow, and can develop. And in order to achieve that, love is the only answer. Joana de Angelis also states that love must be learned and can be learned. And when she speaks about the fact that love can be learned, she is actually giving us the meaning of our lives. We have been created from love to manifest love in its real meaning, in its totality, the unconditional love that Jesus came to teach us. So the purpose of our lives is to take the journey that the man took inwards until we realize that under the clear waters of life, there is a bed of diamonds in each one of you, in each heart, and in each soul. We are essentially love. And if we go back to the lessons of the Master, because if the purpose of life is to learn to love, let's get started. So we are going to find the expert of the law who stands up to Jesus and asks him, "Teacher, what should I do in order to inherit eternal life?" What is written in the law? Love your Lord, your God, with all your heart, soul, strength, and mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. You have answered correctly. Do that, and you will live. So we hear that so much in the Spiritist movement. We say that so much. What does that mean? To love God. To love God is to use all our power, everything that we have and everything that we are, to love the divine being. But we don't really know what the divine being is. So the safest way to love God is to love God's creations and God's creatures. So to love our neighbor. But the starting point has to be to love ourselves. I can only love others to the extent that I have learned to love myself. So in the same book, Mining of Love, Joana de Angelis has a chapter called Self-Love. And it's interesting because it's hard for us to distinguish self-love from ego type of love. So she defines self-love as self-respect. But self-respect is something that we can achieve as we get more and more connected to the idea and to the truth that we are divine beings. The more we are aware that we are unique, divine, special, beautiful, no matter what, no matter our level of awareness, the more we feel ourselves to be that, the more we will respect our own selves. And respect will guide our choices through life. So I no longer, even if I want to do something that will be harmful to me, I choose not to, because I respect myself, because I respect the divine in you. So self-respect helps me to choose the absolute best for myself. But self-respect is a little bit more than that. With self-respect, we learn to dignify every single moment of our lives. And by this, I mean, we seek to achieve deepest knowledge in every single situation. We seek to experience higher level of feelings in every single situation. We seek to achieve higher levels of spirituality in every single situation. Self-love also helps us to acknowledge our victories while thinking about the next step necessary for continuous growth. So when we love ourselves, we rejoice with those very tiny little steps that we have taken forward without losing sight of what still needs to be done. With self-love, we also look at our mistakes and seek opportunities to amend and to grow. So self-love leaves no place for guilt, for crucifixion, crucifying. We don't crucify ourselves. When we have self-love, we look at the accomplishments, we look at the mistakes, and we move forward, understanding that this is part of our humanity. When we deal with ourselves from this place of love, tenderness, and compassion, we become then able to look at the other and to act towards him or her with the same tenderness, love, and compassion. The harshness that we use towards ourselves is the harshness that will treat our neighbors. So, in talking about relationships, in talking about the other, as we close this first important point, this is starting point, which is self-love. Okay, so how do we love others? What can we do? And we go back to Jesus and look at the ways that Jesus loved us and continued to love us. So, what can I say? I pick up two different points that I thought were interesting. When Jesus looks at you or looks at me or the higher spirits, they do not see us in our narrow present moment and limitations. They see us as eternal beings. They see us as travelers in a journey, in a process. So when Jesus looks at you and me, he looks at the past, the circumstances that led me to be where I have arrived. But he also looks at the potentials and the angel that exists in each one of us. We too can practice this type of experience. As we look at each other with love, we should seek to see in each person not that narrow moment where we live in, but understands that if he or she is acting this way or that way, there is a history, there is a trajectory, there is difficulties and struggles, there is pain, there is suffering. But ahead of them, there is also hope. There is also potential. And so this helps us to approach each other with a more loving and compassionate way. But in addition to that, love, when Jesus relates to us and we look at the way that he related to the people at his time, he always, always dignified and uplift them. So he lived with many different people. People with darkness, people with struggles, people who were sick, people in different conditions, who were prostitutes, who were tax collectors, who were ill. And in no time, you will ever see or hear him diminishing, criticizing, judging, degrading any human being, because there is no place in real love for any of those. So this also gives us an important reference, a reference that as we seek to learn to love, we need to love, seek to love by dignifying and by uplifting the ones who are going along with us. We can look at a few examples in the gospel. We can cite, for example, Zacchaeus. He was short, physically and morally. He was a tax collector. He was wealthy, but he was also lost. But he was short. He was very short. And this feeling of feeling so short is something that we kind of know a little bit about it. And we can talk about the woman from Samaria, the one who goes to pick up the water at the well. Well, women at the time of Jesus were not really seen or really valued for anything. But in addition to that, this particular woman had had 5 marriages. And at that point in time, it was seeing a man who was not her husband. She was thirsty for love. She was thirsty to be seen. She was thirsty to be recognized for her value, as we all are. And how does Jesus treat them? To the man who climbs on the tree. He's passing by, he enters Jericho, and he passes by, and when he passes by the spot, he looks up. And there he is, Zacchaeus, and he says to him, Zacchaeus, come down immediately, because I must stay at your house today. Zacchaeus, come down immediately. You are not so short to be worth of my love. And I wish to make my home inside your heart. I want to visit your house, not your physical house. I want to enter your heart and deliver the message of love and let you know, Zacchaeus, that you were worth it, simply from being. And to the woman of Samaria, he offers her the living water. First, he speaks to her. He speaks to someone who is a foreigner. He speaks to someone who was a woman, in the condition of a woman at the time. So he breaks the conventions, he breaks the rules, because the human needs must always come before any rules and any conventions, human suffering. And so he speaks to her, and he has so much to offer her. He says to her, he offers her the type of water who would become a well of water in her, is springing up to eternal life. But that was not the end of it. So he came to teach us that the starting point in this journey to learn to love is to learn to love ourselves, is to seek to respect ourselves. He came to teach us that we must love others by uplifting them and dignifying them and helping each other to restitute our sense of worth. But he said something else. Remember, when I'm saying to you to love your neighbors, I'm also including your enemies. You have learned that you should love your friends and hate your enemies. And I'm here to tell you that you should love your enemies as well. And if you do so, the world will change to a better place and a new order will be established, because the chain of hate will finally be broken, giving rise to a new era for humanity. The gospel, according to Spiritism, states, love your enemy and do to them all the good possible. And you might be thinking, but I can't do this. I'm struggling to love my friends who I not always am able to forgive, who sometimes I do carry some resentments. I have problems loving my family. I have problems loving my religious community. You're telling me to love my enemies? Amélia Rodrigues, in the book Living with Jesus, which is a precious book that is under my papers, and I highly recommend, she tells the story of Bartholomew. Bartholomew seeks Jesus one day when he's sitting by the sea, and he wants to talk to the master. So he approaches Jesus and he says, "Lord, I would like to confess you my love for you and my fascination with the kingdom of heaven, but I also need to tell you that I'm having a very difficult time with the enemies of our message. I was going to work and a group of men approached me, and they were hostile, and they were sarcastic, and they spoke badly about you. And I was able not to talk back to them, but yet my heart is full of resentment, and I feel that I cannot forgive." Jesus looks at him and tells him softly, "Bartholomew, the soil that refuses the plow blade remains arid. The same with the human heart that returns offense and the mind that closes itself to the opportunities that yield to the laceration of pride." And Amélia Rodrigues, commenting, she will say that very often the ones who are the aggressors, who ones that are hostile towards us, often they envy something that we have or they believe we have. And because they also are under the illusion that they cannot possess the peace of the harmony that we have achieved, they will disturb us, trying to bring us down to their level where we can all be equal in our inferior vibrations. The dialogue between Christ and Bartholomew goes on, and he listens, and then at some point he says, "Master, I fear not to possess the moral strength necessary for such battles." And so often we feel this way. We too don't have. It's way too much ahead of us. How do I build the moral strength? And Jesus said to him, the moral strength comes gradually. First, through the small aches and pains until we're able to withstand bigger challenges. It also comes to the patience that you're going to face the unhappy occurrences. And finally, it's going to come through a deep trust in God, who never imposes itself on anyone. And he says to Bartholomew, "I know you will bear all kinds of aggressions in my name and in the name of the truth, because I have invited you to be shepherd of beasts that one day will be transformed in sweet sheep. Stay loyal to the message and move forward in peace without letting the stones of the way deter you. And keep the certainty that the kingdom of heaven is already delineated in your heart and in your life, just waiting for the moment to unfold itself." So I speak to you, my friends, in our frailty, limitations, and difficulties. We too can do this. And the gospel offers precious pearls that can help us in overcoming our own limitations. So, in the gospel, we learn that love replaces the personality for the union of all beings, and that one day we will learn to love one another without any discrimination as brothers and sisters. But it also teaches us and challenges us, because we all have heard that without charity there is no salvation, but in the gospel we also learn that to love the enemy is the most sublime application of charity, because such a virtue is one of the greatest victories attained over selfishness and pride. And he goes on to describe what it means to love our enemies. And many of you probably have already read the gospel. But which one of us actually do any of these things? To love the enemy is to have the ability to hold neither hatred, rancor, or desire for revenge, to forgive unconditionally without ulterior motives, to do not ever set obstacles for reconciliation, to wish good, to rejoice of all the good that comes in the way of our enemies, to extend a helping hand whenever necessary, to abstain from any type of action that may cause harm, to repay evil with good, in everything without any intention of humiliating. And again, I understand this is a huge task. But Bartolomeu, for him too, it was a huge task. And Amélia Rodrigues tells us that he went on preaching under a very hostile environment. As she says, he faced the brutality of the enemies as he went through India and Armenia, disseminating the gospel of Jesus. His contribution is immense. He actually translated the Gospel of Matthew to the local language. And in the year 90 after Christ, he was crucified for the first time because he survived. And so years later, he's actually crucified for the second time. And Amélia Rodrigues says that he left to us the most extraordinary lesson of courage and faith because he died teaching love and forgiveness. He's no different than you and me. He had his fears, he had his doubts, he did it. You can do it too. But it's not easy, I understand. And it's painful, yes, because when the plow blade comes to the harshness of our hearts, is still full of pride, we suffer. It hurts. It's a sacrifice. But it's one that I really encourage you to undertake. Open yourselves to the possibility of this work. The Spirit Fenelon, in concluding our talk, in the Gospel, he says, the sacrifice that obliges you to love those who offend and persecute you is painful. But it is precisely this type of sacrifice that will rise you above them. Such sacrifice is the immaculate, the divine host offered to God on the altar of our own hearts, a sweet-smelling host whose fragrance rises up to God. So this is what we have to offer each day to God and to Jesus, is this fragrance of our effort, of our sacrifice, of the pain, because love is the solution for everything. Love is worth it. Love is everything. And I am thankful for the lovely opportunity to be here talking to you today, and ask God that can bless all of us and continue to bless this day. Thank you very much.